Hi, my name is Pascal Hickman, and I'm with Montana State University. I'm a teacher of French here for the Department of Modern Languages, and I'm here virtually, thanks for having me, to present about a trip that we took just this spring to Zawiya Tahansal in the Upper Atlas Mountains of Morocco. And it was my first service learning experience. I was guided by my mentor Ada Justi, who is a senior faculty here at MSU. And it was really an amazing and life-changing experience, so I wanted to talk to you about it. The first thing I wanted to talk about with service learning is to remember that it's a partnership. In fact, I'm kind of uncomfortable with the idea of the terminology service learning because I guess it's the term service that makes me a little bit uncomfortable, because it feels like it's some kind of top-down thing, like we're going to come in and provide a service, when actually it's more of an exchange. So it's a partnership, and the learning and the service goes both directions. It's a community-based learning and engagement, and the learning is academically based, but the service is too. So basically, what did we do? I took a group of French students from our department to Zawiya Tahansal in this tiny little village in the Upper Atlas Mountains, a Berber village, a medieval Berber village in the Upper Atlas Mountains of Morocco, where we went to teach English lessons and French lessons and computer literacy to the local children at the local school, as well as to local adults. And so that was the service we provided. And we did this in collaboration with a few foundations: the Atlas Cultural Foundation, the Association SMNID, and the Association Amzerai. And I think what's really important to mention about these three associations that are listed here, SMNID and Amzerai in particular, these are local-based associations that are put together by the locals and the elders of the village, and they are the ones who are requesting services from our university. Through the Atlas Cultural Foundation, we have an exchange between Montana State University and these local associations. And the important take-home point about this is that the service that we provide is something that they have requested, that is generated within their community, not something that we have come in and put upon them. And the exchange part is that the people of Zawiya Tahansal really did my students and me a great service by speaking to us in French, befriending us, showing us their homes, and teaching all of us invaluable lessons about integrity, authenticity, community, and love. So the fundamental principles of service learning, and something to keep in mind, are two things: is the reciprocity. So just like I said, it is a partnership, and the learning and the service goes in both directions. There's not one group that's above the other. And reflection. It's really important that service learning and the learning part of service has to come and circle around reflection. So I asked my students to keep a journal, and I provided for them sample questions for reflection in their journals, so that they could keep that open. So I want to talk to you about what we did to prepare for the trip, and then I'll talk to you about what we did. If you're thinking of putting on your own service learning, there are some things that you need to think about in advance. In our particular case, it involved a lot of preparation with guiding students in preparation of lesson plans, because my students were going to be the teachers, and for change, I didn't have to be in front of the classroom. They were the ones that were going to take on that role, but they didn't have much teaching experience, and so I was their guide and their mentor through that. In hindsight, I can say that I should have prepared them even more. I required many lesson plans to be put together, but next time I'm going to actually put together a teaching training to give them more tools on how to handle a classroom because it was a new experience for them. Another important preparation is to study the local culture and customs before we go. This is important so that students can have a profound respect for where they're headed before they even get there. One other thing we did, which turned out to be probably the most useful thing, was meeting regularly for dinners. And that's how we planned our trip. But really, the true value and benefit of those regular dinners was that it built a really wonderful group rapport, and we became very close before we traveled together. I think that's really important because the group dynamics need to be worked out before we even get on the road. And so, you know, there are some pitfalls and possible pitfalls with doing service learning. And I think there is a potential for great social violence if it's not done with awareness and with respect, with preparation and education. And so I think it is very important to provide your group with questions for deep, critical reflection. What are we doing here? Why are we going? Before you even depart. I did not ask my group these questions until day 3 into the service project, and it should have been something that I brought up before we left, so that was another lesson I learned on the road. It's really important as you prepare a trip like this to always keep your partner's needs and interests at heart. We have to be careful when we seek out partnerships for service learning where we want to provide a service. We don't want to overwhelm them with too much. We don't want to come in and give them things they don't need. It is a very delicate task, and that's something that needs to be kept in mind. And the final goal of all these preparations and in putting together any service learning project is to have a sustainable, ongoing service learning project. I don't see much value, I wouldn't see much value in going to Zawiya Hansal for just, you know, a week and a half with a group of 10 students and then never showing up again. The true partnership is something that goes on and we will set up and continue for years to come. This was our 3rd visit to the village of the French students of Montana State University. My colleague Ada took them the first 2 times. And I look forward to many, many, many years of this partnership, as do the community elders. Ishmael, one of the elders, came to me one day when we were there and said to me, "It's hard to make friends, but it's very easy to lose them." And his point was that he wanted this to be an ongoing thing. He introduced me then to his grandchildren and explained to me how important it was that they had a bright future and that they were prepared for the future that the village was going to face. And that was going to be through education. They all were learning, they speak Berber, Arabic, English, and French, and we were their resources for English and French. So let me show you a little bit about where we were and what it was like. So this is a map of Morocco, and even though the village is not located on this map, it's not listed, it's about here. Zawiya Hansal was the name of the village. Up in the upper Atlas Mountains of Morocco. We flew into Marrakesh, and then we had a very long drive up into the mountains before we arrived into the village. And the village was absolutely stunning. Here is an image of the village, so you can see the mountains in the background, and the stone huts are actually all down in here. It's hard to see. You can see the steeple from the mosque, and you can see one of the grainage storages, but the medieval village was there nestled in, made from the rock, so kind of hard to see. I've got a better picture here of what it looked like. And so we stayed here for about 10 days, 12 days. We lived at the Sheikh's house, and this is an image of the Sheikh's house. We lived here with him. The sheik is the head of the tribe. He is in charge of 5 villages together, that together are called Zawiya Tahansal. And as you can see, it was just absolutely breathtaking and stunning, a really spectacular place. Here is most of my group. I regret that we're missing a couple people in this photo. All French students here to teach French and English. So the school where my students taught was built through the Atlas Cultural Foundation and Association Sminid and the Association Amzarai. And students would come from, they would walk as much as 45 minutes every morning to come into class. And we had quite a large group of children and a good-sized group of adults. On the left-hand side here we have adults with 2 students leading a group, and then I have 1 student paired up with 1 adult so that they could talk in the target language they chose, English. And again, when we were preparing our lesson plans, that was something that was tricky because we didn't want to come in and teach them what we thought they should learn. We wanted to come in and teach them what they wanted to learn. So we had to go in very prepared and flexible, ready to teach whatever it is they requested. And sometimes they asked for things that we weren't quite prepared for, and so that was part of the challenge of it. And mostly they really wanted the experience of, you know, conversation and vocabulary and the benefits of this cross-cultural exchange, which was amazing because, you know, my students benefited just as much as their students did, so it was really a perfect exchange. Here on the right-hand side were the children, and it was really neat because the local school teacher would have all the children come in and then they would vote what they wanted to study for the day, which was so different from what we usually do here in America. I thought it was really wonderful. And so once the children voted on what they wanted to study, then that's what we did. And so they decided they wanted English and not French. And so we taught them colors and numbers and lots of vocabulary, verbs, present tense, all of this kind of thing. So those were the lessons that we did every day. And then we also, the children were divided into 2 groups because there's quite a few of them. The schoolhouse was pretty small. And while half the group was downstairs with education in language, the other half of the group was upstairs in the computer lab getting lessons on using the computer. And here on the right-hand side, here on my right, we have our students working with the small student groups. Each were at a computer, and a lot of it was just, you know, pretty basic computer operations, how to open and close files, how to navigate with the mouse, how to, you know, create a Word document. And then also, one of my students, an engineering student, came up with logic games that involved math that was to test their skills and get them used to using, you know, Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Word, even Microsoft Paint, so they could get the motor skills of working a mouse. And it turned out to be a really fulfilling experience. The children were really excited to have us there, and we were really excited to be there. And that's the true exchange, the partnership that I'm talking about. I hope in the future to bring some of the villagers from Zawiya Tahansal here to Montana State University, because I would love to have them come and visit my classrooms and teach some lessons in my classrooms. So that's something on the books for the future. On the right-hand side, on the last day, we have one of my students leading the children in game activities that were, you know, pedagogical games, just outside the village schoolhouse. And the last day was reserved for gaming and fun and play, and we had a really, really fantastic time. Our experience at Zawiya Tahansal is hard to even put into words. It was really life-changing for all of us. and it was really fantastic. And I really enjoyed reading the journal entries at the end of all of my students and what their thoughts were about the experience, and in particular what they learned. Again, service learning must have that element of reflection for it to be learning. Otherwise it's just service and it doesn't belong in the academic setting. And so that reflection is really important. I have a page with that I'm going to email you that you can, if you'd like a copy of it, you can contact me. I will send it on with this video, and you can also contact me. I'll put up my email address at the end of this, where I can send you this in a PDF. And it's got sample questions such as, what is your role at the community site? What were your initial expectations? How have these expectations changed? What about your community involvement has been an eye-opening experience? These kinds of questions, I have a whole list of 25 of these questions, get students really thinking about the meaning of what they're doing so that they can get to the learning side of this service. So I have compiled a few quotes that I've got up anonymously from my students' journals, and that I thought were really fantastic because they really show what we learned. The first one, on ne peut pas être égoïste quand on voyage dans des pays étrangers, which I just loved. You can't be egotistical or self-important when you're traveling. That was a fantastic lesson to learn. Nous pouvons apprendre beaucoup des enfants et des villageois. C'est une leçon sur la vie. And I think that this life lesson that we learned from the people of Zawiya Hansel was the most important thing. And that's really what we're doing here at the university. I mean, I teach French and I teach grammar and verb conjugations, but that's not really why I'm here. I'm here because I am on a path of learning, just as my students are, and together we can learn how to be whole and complete human beings. I think that's the real goal. Another one, someone said in their journal, j'essaie d'adopter cette même hospitalité dans ma vie quotidienne. The hospitality of the people of Zawiya, the Berber village, and the Moroccans in general, is just mind-blowing. They are so open and hospitable and genuine. It was a really wonderful lesson that we all are now trying to emulate. A lovely one here is, j'ai appris qu'un au revoir difficile est la preuve qu'il existe tant d'amour dans ma vie. This was really quite profound, written by a student who has now visited this village twice. And the idea that, saying goodbye was very difficult for this student. And he kind of, struggled with it a little bit and then realized that it was a good thing. In fact, he plans on returning many times in the future. We'll be there again next year. One thing that I thought was an important reflection in one of my students' journals, a student said, je veux faire beaucoup, mais je n'ai pas assez de matériaux. Je suis un peu, beaucoup débordé. And I think I'm going to blame myself for this one. Even though I required my students to come up with many, many lesson plans, I think I could have done a better job preparing them for the challenge that I was teaching. And so in the future, I'm going to put together a more intensive training session so that students can have a little bit more practice and feel better prepared when they arrive as teachers in the role of teachers in a classroom. A really profound one that was in a journal was, il faut que je quitte mes attachements pour être heureux. Letting go of attachments to be happy. I can't think of better life lessons than this. This same student said, on doit pratiquer ce qu'on dit. And this was really important too because we had a lot of evenings where we talked about the changes we were experiencing. We talked about the lessons we were learning, what we planned on changing when we got home in our own lives. And the important idea that, yes, we talked about it, but we have to actually do it. And this student in particular has done an amazing job of doing exactly what he said he would. So that was very fulfilling. C'est quoi la définition du succès? Selon le chic, c'est d'avoir la santé et le bonheur. This is really important, I think, because so often in the United States, we are taught that success is all about, you know, making a certain amount of money, buying that house and the shiny car, and I think that we're kind of lost in that place. And the chic saying that, you know, the success is happiness and health. It's so true, and it's not. I mean, it almost sounds trite because yeah, we've all heard this before, but it's a whole other thing to go and live in a simple village like this and see how true that really is. So it's a very big lesson for all of us. One student said, le travail que nous faisons est important parce que les parents veulent toujours que leurs enfants aient une meilleure vie que la leur. You know, one thing that, and this is true, when we got there, we were kind of, you know, there was a little bit of uncertainty about what we were doing because we were teaching lessons to students who had better language skills than we did. So what were we really doing? And one of my students is also a columnist for our local paper. And she wrote in her article on the ups and downs, called The Ups and Downs of Service Learning, in our local university paper, she wrote, the question of whether we should have been there or not was an extremely pressing one. No one wanted to expose anyone in the village to oppressive ideologies or in any way encroach. However, second-timer Logan Moriarty, a sophomore who studies French and Arabic, put all my fears to rest when he described his friendships in the village. If we shouldn't have come here and didn't, then I would have never met my good friends Hassan or Mohammed, and just the thought of that makes me so sad. And that was the point, and that's kind of the point of service learning, is that it's about building friendships, it's about building partnerships, it's about cultural exchange, and it's also coming to terms with what our role is. And I think, again, being critical of and reflective of what we're doing is very, very important when we go into a project like this. I have just a couple more and then I'm going to wrap it up. Another thing that I saw that was really great that had more to do with within our group dynamic, the connections I have made with those traveling with me have been unlike anything I've ever experienced before. It's a massive inspiration and a motivation for me. This is exactly what it's all about. Community, friendship, sharing on this planet. That's, you know, that for me is the biggest success of this trip. Finally, one student said, there is the truest version of myself that needs no introduction, no assimilation. The people of Zawiya to Hansel taught me that this honest way is available to me, always allowed to be. What an incredible, incredible lesson. So we had some pretty big learning outcomes. You know, the art of hospitality and generosity that the Moroccans taught us. The reciprocity of service learning, I cannot stress that enough. It is a reciprocal partnership. My students learned about the joy of teaching. We all learned more about the beauty of cultural diversity, the art of cultural awareness and being sensitive culturally. We understood a new understanding of wealth, the Sheikh's definition of success, the importance of community, friendship, a new understanding of self, and, you know, last but not least, greater fluency in French conversation. My students went and spoke French for 2 weeks in Morocco, and that was really great. So just to close, I have a few lessons in leadership, you know, things that I learned myself, it being my first trip, that I learned the hard way, or sometimes, you know, just because it was my first time around. One thing I learned is that I will better guide my students in lesson planning so they're more prepared. And before we leave, before departure, I'll be more clear about what service learning is and about the critical reflection I expect my students to be doing. I will better manage group dynamics. That one is always a tricky thing, and I think I could have done a better job with that as well. Just about how we all interact together as a group. making sure to not leave anyone out and to bring everyone to this circle together. An important lesson is the importance of following through. I'm sending off, thank you cards and trying to get some previous service learning projects that were done there in the previous years finished and actually come through fruition and completion. A great lesson I learned in leadership was that this collaborative model of leadership it works. I was a little nervous about that because we came in as a collaboration and I wondered about what my position as an authority figure on this trip would be. And I chose a collaborative model and it worked. I think it's always important to keep our volunteers humble and well-informed about the culture that we're visiting. And again, it's that critical reflection that helps with that. And finally, I learned that it's okay to occupy a space of uncertainty and to question what we're doing, because to question is good, and it keeps us respectful. So, if you're interested in a copy of these reflection questions, which actually come from the Faculty Toolkit for Service Learning in Higher Education, edited by Serena Schaefer and Kara Connors. If you're interested in a copy of this or you want more information, feel free to contact me. Again, my name is Dr. Pascal Hickman, and my email address is pascal.hickman@gmail.com. I'd be happy to talk to you about any service learning project that you're thinking of putting together. So thank you very much, and have a wonderful afternoon.